You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, and I've got a very special guest today because it's someone I have just recently met, and their journey is one that I've been very interested in because there's a lot of similarity to myself. Welcome to the program, Michelle Pritchard.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
That is my pleasure, my new friend. Michelle is the founder and head consultant at Aligned Business Consulting, and you are a dental specialist business consultant, Michelle.
Yes.
So you focus more on, rather than a general dental practice, although you could do any dental practice, you have got a specific niche into the dental specialists out there.
Yes, that's correct. So we owned our own dental practice, a general practice that we grew. So my husband is a dentist, and then he became ill. So I went out and actually worked for someone. So I became a practice manager at a startup medical practice, and then at an orthodontic practice. So I was a practice manager there, and then moved on to a business manager because it grew quite a lot. So I sort of started working from home before everybody else worked from home, so back in 2019. And yes, I feel that I've got a great connection with the specialists and what works and what doesn't. It's all about relationship marketing for me anyway, and any dental practice is. But yeah, I feel I've sort of got a good understanding of the specialist market through me managing that practice that I was at for 8 years.
I love it. I love it. So what have you noticed are kind of the main differences between managing or consulting to a specialist practice and a general dental practice?
Well, obviously general, it's like going to the doctor, isn't it? They can diagnose everything, but they can't, there are some things obviously they can do with basic orthodontics and things like that, but they generally have to go off to a specialist to do it. And a specialist, they're only concentrating on that one area. So you can really niche down what you can do with regard to it. Your products and services are very narrow with what you can actually do. So you can see what's working. It's easy to analyze the return on investment and things like that, depending on what they are. It's about the relationship building. It's about the treatment conversion. So understanding what's actually working and what's not. So it's just a smaller amount that you can look at, as opposed to a general dentist. Like, you can say, well, what do you really enjoy doing? And they'll say, yeah, I enjoy doing this. And it's like, well, can you focus more on that? And it's like, no, because all of this happens with where they actually are geographically and things like that. And I know my husband was just like, the mouth is very limited with what you can actually do. So he was like, I love general dentistry because I don't want to niche down even further and just be doing the same thing every day. So from a general dentist perspective, that's great, with what they do. But yeah, so just with working with the specialist, there's efficiencies and things like that I can sort of see and work on and work with them to do. So yeah.
Well, you would have been wildly, helpful for orthodontic practices going through all the lockdowns and everything. I mean, you're over in WA, I'm from Victoria. Both of us have had a lot of lockdowns, like the rest of Australia has as well. But that was a big thing to try to overcome for ortho practices when the kids couldn't come through for all, or not just kids, but adults as well. All the patients couldn't come through for their adjustments, and the backlog for an ortho practice, quite different to the backlog for a general dental practice.
Yeah, so that was very interesting with COVID because, as I said, I was the business manager there and I was working from home at that stage, and I was just on to what's happening, like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And I'd ring the practice and I'd ring my boss and I'd go, how's it going there? He goes, everyone's just like normal. Nobody's even worried about everything. I go, are you serious? Like, this is bad. This is so bad. Anyway, and I was trying to work out policies. ADA didn't really have any policies. I think they had a poster or something. So I was going onto US sites to try and do things. Then everything like shut down. It was just like, this is what's happening. And then obviously we were directed by the APIAA. So we went into the practice, had a big discussion with all the staff that, this is what we're going to do. We want to work together, blah, 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 blah. We were on a different award to the federal award. So standing down and things like that wasn't an option. And so we worked with the girls, and we were very lucky because we were early adopters of dental monitoring. So dental monitoring, you can scan your mouth. So we did it with Invisalign. So people could scan their mouth, and they do that every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks or every week? Anyway, but we then could, so artificial intelligence was used just to see if there was an attachment missing, if the aligner wasn't seating, and we get that back. So we could just monitor them remotely, which we had been anyway, which was fantastic.
Wow.
I think the hardest thing, I remember going in on that day when we decided that we were all shutting down and, all the rest of it. And then obviously sending out the communication to all of the patients, and then getting the abusive call because somebody couldn't have their braces off. And it's just like, well, you're in a holding pattern. You have to understand that, this is affecting the whole world. There's nothing we can do about it. And I still remember, she's actually scarred me, this lady, and about her daughter. And I think another orthodontic practice or a dental practice or someone was still practicing, and they're like, well, they're still practicing. And it's like, well, we're not. And this is why, and we're following, what's happening with the government, the regulatory authorities, not necessarily the government, the health. And that's why. And, yeah, it was just really, really awful. And then a dentist said they would take off this girl's braces. And I'm like, are you serious? So I ended up calling them and I said, look, it's up to you if you would like to do this, but really I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know, like the dentist has actually asked these questions, which is a big concern as well for us. And, you're very lucky that you've actually finished. So you're in a holding pattern. You're not needing any adjustments to come in for us to do it. So, and we didn't have anybody, I don't think we had any emergencies that we couldn't handle remotely, which was really good. But the big thing was, the working from home policies. We had to set up those from scratch, make sure we could monitor everything to get everybody working. So it was a lot of work. We were lucky we were part of the Invisible Orthodontist. And I remember being, you have your communication, like your group sort of chat. And I remember people going, oh, we're going to go and do this and we're going to go and do that. And I said, I put on there, like, we should all work together, like what we were discussing earlier, to work together to get these policies, to do this, to do videos, like it was instructional videos, like a practice can do this. And then we can just all share the videos. This is what you do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. And it was really good. And then that happened. So one of the management came on and he was like, yep, this is a great idea. So we all worked collaboratively and it was just really, really good. So being part of a community to assist is something really big that I saw as well. And that was really good. And there's patient, we weren't like Victoria, we weren't shut down for as long, and we went into like level 2 restrictions so people could sort of come in to have things done. So that was good. So we were quite lucky, but certainly a changing time. And, that's when the whole landscape changed so rapidly. And I think, with telehealth and things like that. So then it was, of course, you had to find what applications were going to be good for a consultant, doing a consultation over the internet sort of thing. So that was another thing. So I was doing investigation for that. So, so there was a lot going on, even though I was working from home. And I think I went down to the JobKeeper or whatever it was as well. So I was working less, but it was still like, a very busy time. So, how did it go with you?
Oh, I was in Victoria, so I hate Dan Andrews. So I just don't want any government here anymore. But I still talk to people now, and just to get a timeline, we're in March 2023. I still talk to people now, not necessarily in the dental industry, but people that didn't have family at home, they lived by themselves, and they still feel traumatized by it. I don't think when for those people who live in a house with other people, I don't think any of us can truly appreciate what it was like to be so physically isolated. But I remember all the ADA presentations back then and all of the stuff that I was reading back then, because that's when I started the club membership, which was a Julie Parker Practice Success membership thing. Started off as free just to try to get all the information out there. But they said legally for Australia, it's this. Apart from WA. Legally for Australia, it's this, apart from WA. I kept looking for this, this water border that separated you from all of us.
I know. Well, our isolation helped us that way, I must say. So, but it was just my goddaughter just turned 19 on Sunday, and last year there was the restrictions over here, so only 7 people were allowed. She had a big 18th planned, but I think it was 7 people or something like that were allowed to her birthday. So that just seems like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, we were very fortunate, and yeah, like I do feel, and my family lives in Victoria. One regional and my sister's regional, but my mum and dad are in the city. And I know my mum, but she was ringing up. So she was just on the phone speaking to people all the time and speaking to people that are on their own. And she said, Michelle, it's just been terrible. And I've just been speaking to them with how they're feeling. And I'm just like, well, imagine just being in the house all day on your own.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can forget what that would be like because we weren't actually. I know that luckily I wasn't experiencing it to that degree myself, but that's all good and past now. It's it's all beyond us, and now that helped. What made you decide to go out and do consulting work and no longer work even remotely for a dental practice?
So my boss, he was very much into continuing education. So I used to attend workshops, I used to attend conferences, and I hear the same thing. I remember we did this HR, it was online. It was obviously all during COVID. And people are like, oh, it's so good that we did this. And I'm thinking, did you not even have any of that onboarding documentation? You didn't even know about an induction. You didn't even know about this. And they go, oh, it's just been so good. And I'm like, this happened to us 20 years ago when my husband, when we first bought the practice, I was actually working in corporate in banking and finance. So I didn't really have much to do with the practice. And then when I had our first child, he came home like 3 weeks later and said, congratulations, you've got a bookkeeping job. And I looked at the books and I just went, how's he going to support us and our new baby? Oh my goodness. So, and same, he was a dentist, went out, bought a practice, didn't know how to run a business, and there was nothing. There was no HR documentation. There was the marketing. There was no website. So operationally, I sort of went in there, and there was no ADA HR back then either, of course. So I went in there operationally and set up everything through my corporate background of knowing what you sort of needed to do and things like that, with appraisals and all of that sort of thing. So we sort of went in there to do that. And then I said, we've got to do a plan. He goes, you can do the plan. I've got a commerce degree. And I go, yeah, I can do the plan. I'm not doing the plan. You're not even going to listen to me. So we did get a consultant in to help us, a third party, and that was really great. And that's when we really systemized our practice. And then we really had our goals of what we wanted to do. And it grew from there. So we doubled. We had a beautiful purpose-built surgery, and it was just lovely. And and obviously grew income, staff, all of that sort of thing. And then I went into the orthodontist. Same thing. He didn't have anything set up. So what I'd done, 15 years earlier for us, I started to do for him, then said, you've got to do a plan. So I helped he and his wife do the plan. And then we did that. And now I'm going to the conferences and it's just like the same everywhere. Absolutely the same everywhere.
Because we can't ever forget that the dental industry is filled with people who haven't worked in other industries normally. And, the dentist studied a dental degree, not an MBA. Not a practice management degree or anything like that. And all the auxiliary staff have just had their experience in the dental industry. And so they know dental inside out. But there's never been that exposure to a broader scale on these other elements, which is why consultants are such a wonderful idea, because practices have that chance, that direct link to systematizing, developing team cultures, a philosophy, a series of goals, a plan to achieve those goals in a very structured way for all of these aspects. And so there is a strong need for great consultants in the industry.
Absolutely. And that's what I've found as well. Since going out on my own, I actually didn't realise, because I feel that my old boss was very blessed to have me.
I love it.
But as you said, I'm in the dental industry through being married to a dentist, but I have a business background. Whereas, as you've said, a lot of those auxiliaries, they get, because there's not a great career path in a dental surgery or in a dental practice, really. So the receptionist or the head clinician or whatever, they get promoted into being a practice manager or the hygienist, whoever, that it's the person that's obviously they're very compassionate, they're caring. But again, the business aptitude isn't there, and they don't know what key result areas that you should be tracking and things like that to get an understanding. And quite often, and I saw this very recently, is they work for the staff. They actually don't work for the boss. It's just like, oh, all the girls, they need, or, all the staff, all the team, they need a pay rise. Everything's gone up. I think we should do this. But there was no analysis done on what you're going to do with revenue, like your revenue, how that's going to affect revenue, if you have to increase prices, what you're actually going to do. Is there efficiencies that we can do that? Looking at what treatments you're doing and what your return is for those. There was none of that done. So they've got people who have just moved through the motions of the practice, and it's just to the detriment really of that practice, which is a business.
And I've never heard that term before, that they're working for the team members rather than for the business viability itself. I mean, there really are the entities that can't live without each other, the team, the business and the patients. We need to look after all three, and to equal measure as well, because one can't function without the other two, and the two can't function without one, without the other one.
So interestingly, you should say that. So Rosemary Bray, she is actually a consultant for orthodontists. So she's from America. So I attended a conference, and I did attend her workshops, and they were amazing. I just love what she does and what she recommends. And then we actually got her into her practice. So we brought her over from the US and had her in for 2 or 3 days. So it was just fantastic. And she said exactly what you said, and I totally agree with it now. In any healthcare, it's not just dental. It relies on 3 things. You've got 3 things that work together to make up 100%. So you've got 33.3% teamwork, 33.3% customer service, and 33.3% clinical excellence. And they all have to work together to make that grow, because and in a specialist environment, generally they will go to their general dentist, who will say, we recommend that you need to get this done. So just say for orthodontics, and they go, yeah, not a problem. So they'll say, we recommend this orthodontist. So that's great. Hopefully that would be your practice if you're the orthodontic owner. And then they'll go out in the community and they'll say, our dentist has recommended, at little Johnny, he needs braces or he needs to see an orthodontist. Who do you go to see? Do you know who's around here? So then their friends will go, well, we recommend this. So then they'll go and Google the practice and they'll have a look around. So, you need to have a really great website and all the rest of it. And then they'll think, oh, that's pretty good. Then they'll go to the socials and they'll have a look and think, oh, yeah, that's really good. There's lots of personal posts. They do lots of fun things. Oh, look, they're having morning tea. They're doing this. They're doing that. That's really lovely. Then they'll ring the practice. So that's really, really important, because that's the first point of call to the practice. So that's when they're going to get their first impression of the practice. So that new patient phone call is really, really important. So they're on their new patient call and they're like, yep, this is great. They've been explained everything. All the new patient documentation goes out, the whole welcome pack. It's all beautiful. It's all professional. They're like, wow, this is really nice. This is great. You're still building that relationship, giving the patient a call a few days before, saying, Dr. Such and Such is really looking forward to seeing you. Have you received everything? Have you got any questions? I noticed that we've done this from the new patient call. They've done a record in the notes, and it's just like any other question. So, it's like really good. So then they come to the practice. So when they come, it has to be clean, it can't have cobwebs on the door as you walk in or weeds outside. It has to present really nicely. It has to have a really good feeling. So, your team have to be there. So that's you're getting it. So you're welcome to the practice. So good to see you. You might have a nice name on the welcome board. Then they'll go into the clinic, so for their treatment, for their new patient consult. So that's the first clinical thing. So, understanding their needs, speaking to them, continuing to build that relationship, how it's going to go, doctor coming in, doing everything explained with the what's recommended together with pricing. And if that ticks all the boxes and they've had a really good referral, that's really good as well. So obviously, bang, yep, we'll take up treatment. So that's when they go into the clinic. So obviously they're expecting to get a good job done. So that's that part of clinical excellence. But that whole team's having to work together because it's a big circle of how it goes around, because they're the people at the end of treatment that are going to say to their friends, yes, you've got to go to that practice. So is essentially, what you and Rose, what I've just followed that philosophy from Rosemary Brave many years ago. It's just a really good thing, and it's just in all healthcare, I think. And you said that too.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing, isn't it? With when you were talking through all of that, I was thinking to myself, because quite often you could forgive a practitioner who may also be the owner of the practice, really just to focus on 1/3 of that, and that's the clinical aspect of it. Or they go, no, we're building up our business, we're just going to focus on the patient. And quite often the team is kind of left behind a little bit, not by any great intention, but when you think about the impact in our own personal lives when we've gone to a training course or we've all been aligned and done some team bonding stuff, that we've really helped to create a wonderful culture and environment that the team can really thrive. We know within ourselves how our energy levels and enthusiasm jumps an enormous step. And so I think that third is a really good thing to think about from a dental practice manager and owner perspective, because it's an indicator of how much energy to spend on each of those three aspects, and it's equal.
Absolutely. And I've just been writing an article on values, because values, the owner's values, it's really important to understand what they're looking at. And I had someone go yesterday, I'm old, why do we need values? Like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, okay. So, it's those behaviors and how you shape everything with those values that you have within your practice that actually contribute to the code of conduct of the staff and how the patients feel. So one of the values at the practice I was working at, managing at, was honesty. So it was a really, really great value, because you could sit down with a staff member when you're doing an appraisal or if you're giving feedback and, saying, as you know, one of our values is honesty. So I want you to be really open communication with me. I'm concerned about this. Or, is there something going on, and all that sort of thing. So you can actually use your values every day to actually shape that culture to make it a fantastic environment. And I think at the ortho practice, that's what we did. So that was a few years ago when I was working with a HR consultant. It was really good. And now I'm just seeing how, and I've done I've actually done some additional learning this year on values and things like that and how to actually do it. And it's an amazing thing to add that into it together with your mission and your philosophy, as you sort of said before. And the accreditation is a good backbone for that as well, like when doing that. But I think sometimes the owners go, oh yeah, we've got to do that, but they just don't realise that they're the foundations for success, and they draw it in with those three cornerstones really of clinical excellence, customer service and teamwork.
Yeah, and I'm pleased that you raised the issue of values, because I feel like values aren't valued until you've got your values and you're seeing the relevance of them. It's very difficult to see the values in values until you start seeing them in action in your own premises. But it does take a commitment, doesn't it? We can't just have, list our values on a piece of paper and stick it up on the staff room wall and go, woohoo, waiting for magic to happen. This is all going to change everything. It requires participation from everybody involved, especially the leaders of the organisation. They really do need to lead by example.
Absolutely. So in this example of a value, so of a company, I can't remember the name, but it was mountainous success was their value. So in the reception, they had the reception set up like Mount Everest at the base camp. At the base camp. Yeah. So they had like logs and stuff as the seats for people to sit on. So it was showing that they're mountainous. So that's what it was about. And then they actually had, for their team, they had a building, a rock climbing wall in their lunchroom so people could do rock climbing. So it was actually visual things that were around with these values. And I still remember it from a podcast or whatever I was reading, listening to, whatever, about values. And I thought, you have to, sometimes it can be visual like that, but, just having it around everywhere, everywhere it's sort of, recorded and you're just bringing it up. And when you're doing performance appraisals as well, I'm now thinking work outcomes is a really good thing. And when you've got work outcomes, you actually can use those values to say, how are you contributing at work using these values? So it's just being imprinted into the actual practice the whole time. So you certainly have it up on your staff room, but you might print it up on a nice card and put it into the waiting room. But, how you make decisions. And that was another thing. That's right. When we were at the dental practice, at the orthodontic practice, something happened with the patient that wasn't great. And it was like, we're going to have to send them off to their general dentist to get it checked out. Anyway, and it's like, what are we going to say? And it's just like, one of our values is honesty. So we're going to tell them the truth.
I love it.
So you shape your decisions by your values as well. So you're just following that through all the time. And it's a really good thing. And that the culture of that practice is amazing because that's how the values are just going through all the time.
I love that example because you think of the impact on all of the other team members, especially if there's some younger ones there, late teens, early 20s, and they see that despite it being uncomfortable, this is what it means to stick to our value of honesty. We're just going to say exactly what happened. That's a beautiful, beautiful lesson. That's great. And the value of values, just kind of to hover in that space a little bit more so, it is like, it is your true north. It's the guiding star. It's what tells us what to do when things get tricky.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And I was trying to use a visual when I was doing it, and it was a circle. It had all these arrows going all these different ways when you don't have values because nobody's got any idea. Whereas when you've got those values, everyone's just in that same direction and it's just going beautifully and you just know. And it's just such a great way to address everything.
Yeah. And I know that when practices are faced with, okay, we've got to develop our values and there's, we've got to be passionate and there's honesty and integrity and there are, 5 billion words out there that we can adopt. But this is a lovely team bonding thing and team engagement thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Let's find out what's important from everybody because part of making sure that values is something that all the team members understand is for us all to talk about and what would that mean in terms of behaviour? Because for some people, you say honesty and they go, it just means I don't steal from you. But honesty as well, you go, if this is a value, we're going full hog into this. And so even if we've done something wrong, we're putting our hand up and saying, did it wrong, this is exactly what happened. And that's what honesty looks like to all of us. And to have that agreement over each of those values is fantastic. And when you do take your team down this path, it doesn't mean you're going to end up having 50 values because if you've got 10 different people with 5 values each, you'll find that as a group and for the business integrity and purpose, you'll settle on half a dozen key values.
Absolutely. And a lot of the words can actually be grouped together. So then that's when you can sort of put them together, say, oh, yeah, well, maybe this doesn't really work. And then you can really refine what you're doing. So, whether it's visually like that mountain of success, or another way is when you're looking at them like we care, like Olivia Newton-John, you can put a person with it as well to sort of think about it. So it gives, lots of things can help with lots of words and ways to do it can help with values as well, rather than, as you said, just writing on a card in the staff room.
Yeah.
So, but to give people an idea to help it understand. And most practices don't have values. Like I have been working with some startups and it's been really great because we can set those up from the start when they're starting to engage the staff so they know straight away what they are when they actually come on board. But as you said, it's a real team building exercise because a lot of practices need to do it. And if they're doing it with their team and they're all working together and, because everyone has different personal values and you want them to be ongoing, as we know, recruitment and retention at the moment is just so hard. So you really want to keep those team members and value what they offer. So being able to, have part of their personal values in that as well is actually a really good thing.
It is. It really is. And I'm pleased you went into the recruitment space because it is really challenging around the country, around, a lot of countries like, UK, US, New Zealand. We're all kind of suffering the same problem. And values play a role in creating an environment that your ideal team members are going to want to come on board with. And it's certainly been my experience. I've had many conversations with people who wanted to adopt a consultant in their business and start some action happening. But it's a common response of, I'm not ready to do it yet because I don't have the right team on board yet. And if you keep doing the same things over and again, keep waiting for these, ideal angel-like team members to come down from the heavens and work with you so then you can actually start working on the business, that's not going to happen because it's happening in the wrong order. You've got to create the environment first for these wonderful team members to be able to see you and identify with you and want to work with you, and then all sorts of magic can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that is a really big thing. And obviously, monetary compensation is a part of it, but it's not everything. And just on your Facebook post, when you were talking about, tell me what you're sort of thinking, and the comments aren't money. It's like appreciation. It's like being valued. It's like communication. It's so many things like that. And those values can espouse that. So yeah, it's a big thing. And having it's a really good, to retain staff and to get great stuff on board.
It is always amazing to me how many people say just a thank you at the end of every day makes a big, big difference. And so, gosh, if you take any lessons from this particular episode, just get into this lovely habit of sincerely and genuinely thanking your team members for their efforts for the day. Yeah.
Yes.
What else have you found lacking in some practices that you can help with?
So some of the dentists and dental specialists, they don't actually they're starting to grow, and as they start to grow, they're engaging like a receptionist and things, and that's when they start taking on the business side of it, whereas I think that's where they have to start looking at an office manager. And in saying that, as having an office manager or a practice manager or a business manager, whatever you want to call them, they need to report every month to each other. They need a designated meeting, like a strategic management meeting sort of thing, so they can see how much has been spent, what the percentage is on supplies, what the percentage is on labs, what the percentage is on personnel costs. And they can see, what treatment conversions they've had, how many new patients they've seen, where their referrals are coming from, all of that sort of thing, tracking productivity. And having that structure, the dentist or the dental specialist can step away. They can get back into the clinic side, because I think by the very nature of dentists, they are a little bit of a control freak. They do like to make sure that everything's sort of going okay, but they can see that everything's going okay because the manager is going to be reporting for them. They're going to have a set time, a set hour or whatever it is every single month, whether it be the first Friday after the end of the month or the second Friday, whatever day, but it's in the diary every single time. And the manager knows that they need to report that. They sit down, they're accountable, they discuss things. It's not just between, oh my goodness, we've got this complaint there, what shall I do? It's a time where you've actually got time to listen, and it's not just between patients. So that's something I've really found as well, that they are either managing it themselves and feeling very disillusioned, or they do have a practice manager in, but they don't really know what's going on because, as we discussed earlier, that they don't. Some of the practice managers don't have the business acumen. So having that is a really, really big thing that I don't see. It's sort of like, well, how much are your personnel costs? Like, what's your percentage? And people, I don't know. And then you sort of talk to the staff and about supplies, and they go, well, we're chucking out stuff because it's out of date. And it's like,
gosh, it makes me feel so uncomfortable. It's so closely throw money down, just out the window.
It's just throw money away. Yeah. Another big thing that I've seen, a really big thing, is that dentists, they at a dental appointment or whatever, they'll go in and they'll do everything and say, I recommend this. This is what it is. Blah 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 blah. And then they look at the price, or the person's given them the hard luck story about this, that, and the other. So they go, we'll just do rebate only for you. They don't even know what sort of policy they're on, and there's 50 million different ones around. They might not even get anything. It might not even cover costs. And I go, why do you do that? And I spoke to one person, and that person said, I'm really blessed to have healthy children. So I just wanted to give back to that person. Fine. I totally get
Beautiful.
it. But you have a system in place where you might do one pro bono per year. So in orthodontics, there's Give a Smile. So the people pay $1,500 to Give a Smile, and they for cleft lips and things for people overseas, and the orthodontist does it pro bono. So, you do one of those a year because that's how you're giving back. Yeah. But you don't just go ad lib, I'm just going to do this, because you're just throwing money down the drain. Oh, and I was speaking with this other lady. She's gorgeous. Her and her husband, they work together. And I was talking to her in the car, actually. And I sort of said, if you just get one thing out about this, and she just, don't do your own price presentations, get your staff to do it, or, so she goes, oh, she's driving along. And I go, what do you do? And she says, oh, I sort of look at it and think, oh, that's a bit expensive. She doesn't even know the patient. That's a bit expensive. Oh, I'll just cut that down. And then she shows her husband, and after she's cut it down, and then shows him, and he goes, oh, no, that's a bit expensive. Just take a bit more off. So they're cutting their prices because they're sort of thinking that's a lot. But I said, oh, my goodness, don't devalue what you do. You've gone to university, you've gone to postgraduate studies. You are amazing at what you do. And not unfortunately, you charge for what you're worth. You've got huge expenses. And I think people sort of think, well, it only costs this to go to the GP. They have a bed and a chair and a stethoscope. Yeah. Dentistry, they have so much more with the plant and equipment. It's huge. So yeah, that's
and it does deserve that particular space does deserve a larger picture view, because one of the things that we can sometimes forget about as dental people is the impact on the patient, the long-term impact on a patient. So you start thinking about, okay, what are the long-term impacts if this person doesn't get orthodontics? They may start cracking teeth because they're not meeting properly. They may start having jaw problems, migraines, makes them hold their head differently, and so they get breathing difficulties, so on and so forth. And you would know more about all of the ramifications of badly aligned teeth more than I would, just by working in the space for a long time. And we can sometimes forget this lifelong impact that we can have on patients, and that's where the value is. On top of that, going through those three prongs, so the patient, enormous lifelong value for having aligned teeth, the team member prong, if you don't charge adequately, we can't afford to get the number or the caliber of team members that we need. We can't afford to update the lockers, the washing machine, the dish, the microwave, all the uniforms, all the things that help make this a really nice environment. We can't celebrate as much wins because there's just not enough money in the pool, because we keep discounting everything. But then the third leg of that stool is the business. And if you don't have proper policy, because we're not saying don't discount, no way,
no,
we're not saying that at all. But if you don't have a proper policy, then this is one of those things that can easily get out of control, just like consumable spend can easily get out of control if you don't have a budget on it. And that then affects your long-term business viability and how saleable that business is at the end of the day. And so we really do, it's a responsible space to be in, to, I think, really identify what is the true reason why I'm discounting. Because I think, I like the thought to give back. That's a beautiful one. And that's where you can go, okay, we've got a policy of every practitioner has the ability to do pro bono work to the value of this $1,000 figure, $2,000, $4,000, $5,000, whatever it is, per year. You don't have to ask permission. You got that. And that takes care of that section of it. But the rest of it, let's really look at, why does it make us so if it's just from discomfort from suggesting the figure, or a fear that patient will reject the treatment plan, or get up and say, oh my God, you just want to buy yourself another porridge, and they walk out. Well, let's deal with that as the issue that it is, because the answer to that issue isn't to discount, because it's always going to be too high for patients. So how long have you been doing the consulting work solely?
Just since last July, so very, very new to the actual industry. And new to social media, so I wasn't really on social media either. So I only just joined LinkedIn basically in July. And then I realized, obviously, with Facebook, I need to sort of be on Facebook, but I was like, I remember going onto Facebook, and I obviously, as personal, I've got a business page, but on the personal one, and I just said to my daughter, "Oh my goodness, all this stuff on Facebook." And she goes, "Mum, that's why you never joined it." I had to be on Facebook because of business, obviously, connections, but I never ever had any friends at all. I think I had one or something, which was the invisible orthodontist or whatever, because I had to connect them or something. I can't even remember. So yeah, so I didn't ever have any friends on there or anything. So it's been very interesting, the whole social media thing, and gaining, just gaining authority around the place. So I've been really lucky. So ADA WA, they're doing a workshop. I'm running a workshop for them, which was really nice.
Wonderful.
Obviously not later this year, that is. So I've been good. Southwest Dental Convocation, I think they're going to have me Dental Specialist Society of WA. So so I have been very lucky sort of to get sort of connections that way and attending events and things like that. But just creating awareness for myself is probably the biggest thing, so people know that I'm sort of around and here and what I can do to help.
Because there's a lot of marketing messages out there bombarding dentists, aren't there? And my colleague Amina, we were talking earlier today, and she had that direct conversation with somebody. She said, "Oh, did you get this email about our dental practice management program and things?" And she said, "Yeah, but I can't remember which one it was because I get so much stuff all the time." And this is part of the challenge that dental practices have, specialists have, you and I have, is cutting through all of that and being top of mind next time they think, "I think I need some assistance in this particular area." And certainly if there are specialist practices out there that think, "Gosh, I haven't got these things down pat. I don't know the values, or we haven't clearly defined the values. We don't have a clearly defined culture." When we recruit, we really are just recruiting for the next warm body to come into the practice because there's not a huge pool out there. We could do with some systematization. We could do with tracking a few key performance indicators to see if we're actually achieving any of the goals that we've got in our minds. But this is where you can help with all of that, and you can really establish that pathway forward for them and help keeping them on track.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just a few. Then that's another thing I've found, Julie, is some people don't want to scale. They don't want to get tenfold. They just want to be in a practice, earn a nice profit, enjoy going to work without all of the other stuff going on. They that's just what they want. And by doing a few small things to systemize how things work, how to track things, I do advocate sort of a cash flow. That sort of seems to be a big negative, but they need to work with their accountants. They need to, they need to sort of pay that because they're going to get a greater return as well with working with their accountant. So one practice I went into, and this was just terrible, their wages bill was huge, like really big,
Too big.
over 45% maybe. And I sort of said, "Has your accountant not said anything about this?" And they go, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, you really need to work with the accountant." So they just had no idea that, and they go, "What's the benchmark?" And I'm like, 25%.
Yeah,
That's probably a little bit more now, obviously, because wages have increased because of everything that's happened. But still, it's just like they had no idea. And it's just so sad, really. But anyway.
And I think sometimes there needs to be a level of permission in that space too, because I've certainly been exposed to some dental practices where you try to bring the accountant in and the accountant has a quiet word to you saying, "I used to try to give advice before, but they don't like paying for that anymore. So they just want me to just do the books and that's it," sort of thing. And so it's sometimes, like, I really am very encouraging. I love what you said about having regular strategic meetings or financial meetings or, leadership meeting, whatever you want to call them, but have these regular intervals to come in and at least twice a year bring your accountant into that mix. Part of managing a successful business is getting out of your own head and your own eyes and having other perspectives come into play who are experts in their area that can say there's greater opportunity going down this path, or that pit's looking out a bit out of control, or if you don't increase your fees to keep up with the wage increases that you're forced to go down, you're going to start slowly going behind as well. And we need to be able to leverage our success off the success of others and their expertise.
Absolutely. And there are, in WA, there's the Small Business Development Corporation, and they offer amazing courses for $20. So you're obviously paying $20. You pay the staff to attend, but there are, if the dentist is a little bit, I don't want to do that, maybe the partner is involved, and maybe, they've got financial bit or whatever, or they might want to become involved from that way. They can actually do courses to learn how to do those sort of things. So I did recommend one of my clients just last 2 weeks ago. There's a course coming up with them, and she goes, I really like the figures and doing all of that. And I go, well, this can show you how to actually do it. So you can set up a system to actually do that. They'll give you templates and everything like that. And it was 4 hours or whatever, but 4 hours of her time for $20 for her to do something to learn that she's enjoying doing, that works out well. So there might be someone in the practice that, like, if the manager is good at that, they can do it. I used to do the cash flow forecast and everything for my boss and the projections. So I used to do all of that. And then we used to monitor that we used to have our strategic meetings every month, but every quarter we'd bring in what was going on and how it was going against that cash flow as well. So, yeah.
There's nothing like getting a snapshot of where the business is right now, but where you're going to end up being in a few months' time. And I remember when I first bought my practice in 2003, and we mentioned earlier I was 33, so I had no idea about anything. Just went in like, oh, yeah, I can do this. This is easy. But one of the best pieces of advice that I received was, how long do you think it would take for you to go out of business if you weren't breaking even? And I said, oh, I don't know. I can't remember I probably had no idea what the answer should be. But they said 3 months. And I said, 3 months. And they said, yeah, how long do you think your staff will hang around if they don't get paid? I'm like, a couple of weeks. How long do you think the landlord would keep you in that lease if you weren't paying? Yeah, 3 months. Electricity, 3 months. Consumables, a couple of months. So we've got to make sure we are projecting forward so we can actually counter all of these large chunks of BAS, superannuation, these large amounts coming out. And when key productive practitioners are going to be on maternity leave or long holidays, that we can actually take steps right now to make sure that we can ride those sort of waves with far more ease than all of a sudden looking at the bank account going, oh my God, what happened to the balance?
Exactly. No, very, very true.
So if people out there are interested in adopting your magnificent services, Michelle, what's their next best step, and what's your journey with them initially in the initial stages of that?
So this is another thing through learning my own business about what to do. So I do offer a complimentary meeting to attend the practice if they want. I found that people are like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I have set up a Calendly link on my website. So people can either make an appointment via phone, or they can make an appointment via Zoom, or I am happy to visit the practice, which is complimentary, no obligation. So they've got those 3 ways to actually do it. And I need to make sure I have my own values as well. So I want to make sure that I'm actually going to be aligning with the person that I'm going to be working with. So, and sometimes I had someone contact me and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I went and actually saw that person and found out what they were doing, but I couldn't offer, I couldn't help. So it was just like, I'm so sorry, I can't help what you're actually looking for. I made suggestions, so I feel that I still did give feedback and hopefully helped a little bit, but I couldn't do that. So yeah, so I have to align with that person and make sure that I'm happy with working with them as well, that way. So yeah, so that's part of it. So it's a 2-way thing in meeting me and understanding what their needs are and then what I can actually do. And now I tailor it a little bit. So recently I'm working with a startup practice and they wanting to get new staff. So I said, look, I can just work with you for this time to get those onboarding documents. So, I'm just working with a short term, but when I spoke to her the other day, she's like, Michelle, I'm going to be using you again. So I can chunk it out as well. So I've got different sort of packages depending on needs. So that's what I do.
That's beautiful. And it's such a space that needs to be customizable.
Absolutely. And that's my whole thing, because I do things bespoke to the practice. And that's what really did frustrate me a little bit when we used to get, dental consultants in and things, and they're just like, you don't call it the reception area, it's the client lounge. Well, if the owner wants to call it a reception, they can call it a reception. If they want to call it a client lounge, that's fine. You don't have to just fit it all into one square. You have to do it what the actual owner or how the practice works. And a client lounge in a very upmarket place would work well. But, if you're treating like kids and everything, they want a fun and friendly space. They don't want a client lounge. It's like, client lounge, what? And, you can't call them patients. They're customers. It's like, okay.
That is a funny aspect of it, though, isn't it? That let's remove all the terms that the patient's really familiar with. Well, but we're trying to make them understand what's going on.
Yeah. But, one thing was a scale and clean. And I get that, because it sounds awful, a scale and clean. So, a continuing care appointment, that's nice. But it's still up to the owners or whoever runs the practice with how they're going to refer it. Yeah. And an emergency appointment, we started calling that a care appointment rather than an emergency sort of thing. But, so you can change verbiage to suit what your practice is, what the owners actually want. But, yeah, when we used to get people in, and it's just like, you can't do that, you can't do that. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah. It's a funny fine line, I suppose, between, guidance and, just do it, as you say, just do it this way. The book says it this way, so you have to do it this way. But, we still need to give people the opportunity to work with autonomy and to be able to say sentences without having to be so careful about every little word that they say as well. Like, these are the larger, broader goals with the values and the vision that we're all working towards. There's got to be some play within that. So the very experienced members of the team who have learned and developed their own wisdom and brilliance about how to roll out their job, that they can still do their thing well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like it that you're flexible with that space. And I remember when I first met my husband, Charles, 11 years ago, and I was first entering into that consulting space, I said to him that, oh, gosh, I find it difficult sometimes because I've got people calling saying, oh, what can you do for me? And there's so much, but I don't know what they need. And Charles said to me at the time, I can't believe it didn't occur to me, but he said it's just like a patient turning up to them saying, well, what can you do for me? I don't know. Do you have anything that hurts or doesn't function properly, or you're unhappy with the appearance in some way? And so that consultant business owner conversation is just like that new patient consult. Tell me where it hurts, tell me where the concerns are.
Yeah, it's absolutely understanding their needs 100% about what they're looking for. And sometimes they don't articulate it well, but we've been in the industry for so long, we sort of get what they're saying. And that's when I'm always doing the proposal, I'll always recount what their worry is. And I've managed to do that well, I believe, because they're just like nodding when you're doing it, going, yep. Yeah. So, understanding needs is a big thing. And it's back from when I was in banking and finance. So I used to be a manager, and we have our staff meetings and things. And it was always like, you must understand the customer needs and then make sure that you match the product to that customer need, and then they'll be happy. And, we easily got targets at our branch, and it wasn't like what banking is now, from what I understand. I've been out of it for so long, I'm not 100% sure where it is, but I think it's got not great. But anyway, but we always got our targets. It was just so easy because we understood our customers, we understood our needs, and we gave them what they wanted. And obviously it is about cross-selling and things like that as well. But by understanding a person's needs, it's easy to cross-sell and do other things like that in banking. And so I've learned that from a long way away, and I always advocate that. And that's part of my whole relationship marketing, really, by understanding and doing the right thing. And you're just going to win success and be the best that you can be.
Love it. What a beautiful line to leave it off on. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. And if people are out there thinking, oh man, I think Michelle would be awesome to come into this practice and help us out a bit, the links are all in the show notes. Just a reminder that it is alignedbusinessconsulting.com.au and all the contact details are there in the show notes. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a joy. And I'm looking forward to meeting you face to face when you come over from WA at ADA Expo. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks heaps, Julie.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, then you should come along and join the club. The club is a whole library of lunch and learns with new lunch and learns being produced all the time that help your dental team gain greater success in your systems, in your team behaviours, in your patient management, in your patient engagement, in their treatment plans. They are usually around half an hour in length, and so team members can sit down, be paid for their lunch break, eat lunch while they're being inspired and delivered all of these insights and strategies that can be implemented so you all achieve greater levels of success. Also, Amina and I, my buddy from Dental Management Expertise, have a company, Dental Business Mastery, together. And our flagship online 1-year course for dental practice managers and dental practice owners to learn how to very successfully manage your dental practice is available. Head over to dentalbusinessmastery.com.au to find out more information and has information about any other courses that we've got available. Also, make sure you do jump onto my website, julieparkerpracticesuccess.com.au, and you will see a whole load of free information. There are articles, the blog, downloads, templates, a whole load of things that are designed to help you overcome any specific challenge that you've got going on in your practice at the moment. If you have any suggestions of topics or guests that I can have on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks for listening.